So let's look at some literary points of view, some ways that narration can affect the story that you're telling. There's some common examples, and there's some uncommon examples. So let's take a look. The classic example is the detached third-person narrative. This is called an omniscient narrator sometimes. It describes the character and the action. It's straightforward. It's used to speed up the action, to sort of establish things. And so in this example from Matoti, from Raw Magazine, it says, Zephyr lived in the house left to him by an uncle on his mother's side, one large room, cluttered with objects. His uncle had often gone on extended trips, leaving Zephyr with no other memory of him than that of deep silences. He developed a particular fondness for two somewhat dilapidated puppets rescued from the ruins of an old theater they'd started. The uncle on his course as a dedicated collector, And then we see Zephyr sort of swatting away some birds. Zephyr devoted most of his time to study and research, or simply to looking around. Those creatures are starting to get to me. And it sort of digs in and moves the story along, and pretty soon the narration sort of falls away, and the story gets a little weirder, but that sort of set us up, and that's pretty common, that third-person narration. The color here and the drawings are so wild and idiosyncratic, and they're very stylized. And so in one way that allows the text to be dry, and the dry text allows the sort of the visuals to really sing. And another example of that is by JIMBO. It's by Gary Panter, from JIMBO. This is also from Raw Magazine, a different edition. So these images are wild, really, really expressionistic, even hard to read in the second sort of image here. But what you're seeing is this dying horse, and dying in this sort of like post-apocalyptic Armageddon. But the text is pretty straightforward. It says, when he got his first BB gun, JIMBO was advised that sport is not really sporting, that killing is to eat without referendum, that when the time comes to kill, it should be done quickly, and that something in agony, beyond hope or help, should be destroyed as the nearest act to kindness possible. And these images are like really striking and over the top and agonizing, but the text is pretty straightforward. And it continues as JIMBO takes this shard and kills the horse in the jugular with it. The text reads, JIMBO searched around in the rubble until he found a piece of metal sharp enough to do the job. He didn't know how a horse was built, but he knew people had big blood vessels in the neck that would kill if you cut them. He thought horses might have something like that. The horse might have been dead when he got over to it. It wasn't moving or breathing, but he didn't think it was completely gone, etc., etc. So again, that's an example of third-person narration. The narration isn't really engaged with the story as much as sort of telling you what's going on. The visuals are really pulling a lot of it. So let's try this. Let's begin a narrative in a common objective, third-person fashion. And we don't need to draw yet. We can just write for 2 or 3 minutes to get the story rolling. And as we move along, you might want to pause this as we come across these various exercises. So I'll give you a chance. Now, a variation on this is the subjective third-person narration. So in this case, it is narrated by somebody who's not the main character, and they have opinions. They have impressions. They have ideas about the main character. And so in this example from Jaime Hernandez, it's a simple one. It's Izzy Ortez telling the story of Maggie. And she says, to begin with, up in the upper top here, this is my friend Maggie. Charming, petite, fragile, and yet at the same time she's mad at hell at the world. Ah, yes, Maggie, what a perfect comic book character she makes. Look, aside From being approximately 18 years of age, she's only 5 foot tall, has a cute face and ass, is kind of naive about things, and lives with her best friend Hopi. He's just as cute, a little rebellious, and even shorter. They live in a small, rundown apartment, etc., etc. And then it continues on by this panel here, the third panel, or fourth one, really. So there you have it. Isn't Maggie the perfect comic book character with her imperfections and her exciting career? Who am I, you say? My name is Isabel Ortiz Rubens. I grew up caring for Maggie since she was born, so I'm put in this comic to tell her story. Isn't that perfect? Actually, this is just another useless installment of Locus También. So Hernandez is being kind of cheeky here. Izzy's being kind of cheeky here. And she does know a lot about Maggie and goes forward to tell the story a little bit. Hernandez eventually drops off a lot of this kind of narrative posturing, and it becomes very straightforward after a little while. But he tried all sorts of narrative devices like this early on. Here's another example from Seth. This is a lot of different people talking about George Sprott, who is the main character of that book. This person is a delivery boy. Speaking in the past tense, he was surprisingly nice to me. He'd take the time to ask about my life, offer advice. Sit down, my boy. He always had a joke or riddle. He knew a lot of dirty jokes. There was a young man from Australia. And now we see the same man in the present tense. I don't know, looking back, it seems kind of pathetic. Maybe he was so lonely that even a dumb kid was someone to talk to. Other times I think, this guy was important, he could have brushed me off. So we're getting a picture of this Sprott character from other points of view. The narration, it's not really narration here in these three orange panels, but it is in these two green panels. And down here we get narration from a bellhop. After he died, though clearly against hotel rules, I went into his room and just stood there and looked around. Sure, he was a self-sufficient guy, but I couldn't help thinking of the hundreds of nights spent here alone. And what about all those things left behind in that place? Did those relics make up a record of a man's life? So you're just getting impressions and ideas. It's a little colder in this last panel, but still it's from a third party. Carol Tyler does this. She's telling the story of her father. She's telling the story of all of her family, but her father especially, and it's very subjective. His name is Charles Tyler, but I call him Dad. Most folks call him Chuck. Married almost 7 decades to my mom, Hannah. He calls her Red. They live in Indiana in one of the few houses he did not actually build for himself. Mom and Dad, 80-somethings, live with a dog, their TVs, tools, memories, and stuff. And then she lets you in on who she is, the same way Izzy did for Maggie. I'm their daughter, Carol Tyler, a.k.a. C. Tyler, narrator of this story. I live in Ohio, also with a spouse and a dog and a child, with my TVs, tools, memories, and stuff, although I say that their world is a lot more sepia-toned, with all their old photographs, quaint encyclopedias, and many heirlooms from the 18th and 19th century. And if I didn't know about that generation's history and how well they've hidden their scars, he'd be just another cranky shopper with a mega truck rolling right past me. I love that greatest generation, she says as she keeps drawing. So very, very subjective. And this is the beginning of the story in which she's letting you know you're going to learn a lot about how she thinks and feels about these characters. And this character, or in this story, highly subjective, and also it's pretty gross, but this narrator gets his in the end, so I hope you'll be all right with that. In this example, there's a lot of conflict in the tone also. You're not really seeing that in the Tyler or in any of these, really. You're not seeing a lot of conflict. So here's an example where the conflict is laid out in the tone. It was a Saturday morning, the day that Mona started stuffing her face. We were standing out in front of Gus Riviere's country store, glowing with a million lights there in the middle of Main Street. When she lit on the pastries in the bakery, things happened pretty quick from there on. She moved to the cream puffs and those disgusting eclairs without missing a beat. So this is what I had to put up with, seeing my little wife blow up like a blimp, seeing her sparkling eyes disappear under her swollen eyelids. People started talking because the countryside's a cruel place. As for Mona, she wallowed in her fat. I had to go down to the city, etc., etc., etc. So she's ostensibly the main character as he just gets darker and darker in his sort of like mental treatment of hers. But in some ways, he's the main character too. And sometimes that can, if you get too subjective, that can sort of that can blur a little bit. So let's try this. Let's write the narrative in a subjective fashion. One character is describing the characters and actions of another, and it's highly subjective. They have strong opinions about the other person, and they're not hiding those opinions. So here's some places to start. Talk about their history. They're looking back. Maybe someone's trying to piece together part of their story, that character's story. It could be the relative or an ex of that person. For a juicy place to start, you can start with just look at him, look at her, look at them, something like that. So do that. We'll take a pause. Now there's subjective or reflective autobiography. So here's some examples where the main character is telling the story. The main character is offering the narration. But again, it's not like that objective third person. It's really, we're let in on that person's feelings and opinions about themselves. This is from Bishak. Oh, spelled wrong. Bishak Som's Spellbound. Ugh, woke up way too late and felt like a slob and complete loser. Even ampersand failed to rouse me. What the hell? Maybe it was all that beer. Must replenish wine supply. Just toast with Marmite, tomatoes and pickles for lunch. Also several cups of tea to reinvigorate, but did not get out of PJs until noon. Pathetic. Must implement a strict get dressed code ASAP. So we're starting to get a feel for how this person wants to be and how this person is, you know. And she also draws, still averaging a page a day, penciled. At this rate, I'll take 74 more days to finish penciling. And then, oh lordy, how much longer to ink and put down gray washes? Oh geez, do I have enough money to last me that long? What the fuck am I going to have to do, or have I gotten myself into? Fuck it, I deserve to order in. I'm going to get an artichoke and olive pizza. And she picks up the cat. Oh my God, ampersand, I love you so much. And then at the bottom, oh shit, I is drunk. So this is a great example of just watching somebody kind of understand who they are, you know, and they're able to be two people at once. The one sort of spinning a little bit out of control and the one sort of commenting on it. These can be self-deprecating. This is an example from Chris Ware, where the character walks upstairs saying nonsense and then has this long sort of interior monologue where she's like, what a great word. People don't use it anymore. It's so dignified, so good-natured. The whole experience reminded me of my own old lady phase that I went through in high school while I was reading Somerset Maugham. The embroidered sweaters, the costume jewelry. I remember genuinely wanting to be old then, to act as if the business of my life was already all but over and that I was preternaturally wise because of it. God, the stupid things you'll do to try to meet boys. So, in this case, again, the character and the person speaking about the character, they're the same person, but they're sort of two different attitudes. And in this case, they're self-deprecating. They can be grandiose. This is Dr. Manhattan from Watchmen. And he's just commenting as he makes his first appearance. Their bleached faces stare up at me, pale and insubstantial in the sudden flare of ultraviolet sunburn in November. You know, he's really sort of really excited by how much he is affecting people, how surprised and awed they are. Eddie Campbell's Graffiti Kitchen has a similar sort of grandiosity. It's not about a superhero, but it's just about a sort of narcissism in a way. The alarm clock wakes. I think I'm going to scroll down to the middle. I go out alone. I go out alone for a drink and end up in front of the Armada where Penny Moore used to dance go-go, or on a little ledge, or so I was told. I peer in to see it. I wander up behind the esplanade, looking down on the sea and the big black sky, and the big black sky, and I am the adrenaline rushing through the streets. I have an insight. I am the only element of continuity in my own life. Excited, I rouse Hardwood, and we have a few beers. I smile at a girl at the Fisherman's. She tells me to piss off. I laugh. Arf, arf. So the important thing here is that, like, I am the adrenaline rushing through the streets. I'm the only element of continuity in my own life. Eddie Campbell does this a lot. He plays around with looking back on one's life and having a particular kind of attitude about it. We'll see Eddie Campbell in another variation too. And it can be delusional. The sort of what do you call the unreliable narrator, and this is something that Dan Clowes does sometimes. So here they are on a talk show, and they're talking about a murder mystery. It was 7:15 a.m. on Tuesday the 9th. We'd been asked to tape a segment for a news show in nearby Federalsburg to discuss our findings in the Goldberg case. The host was a real prick, just the kind of guy I hate. I get so tired of smug parasites who think they have the God-given right to second-guess the work of a professional. And by this point, we start to realize, like, wow, not only is he a jerk, he's not even clever, you know? He's talking in such arrogant cliches that you realize, like, he's not reliable. Especially he's not reliable, you know, and he's probably dangerous. Here's an example where the reflective autobiography can be very visual, the subjectivity. Kim Kranz's Blossoms and Bones. So she says, there's a lot going on this page, but the main thing, my mouth is watering with shame, is written in such raw, visual, painful strokes, such, like, you know, dripping with ink and scratched out. And so the subjectivity here is visual. And you don't actually see that in some of these other examples, except maybe the Eddie Campbell. Everything else is pretty, the narration is pretty straightforward. It's written like text is normally written. It's straightforward. It's the text is on a line. All the lettering's okay. This is a little bit of expressionism here, but especially in the Kim Kranz, is very, very much the subjectivity comes out visually. So let's try this. Let's depict the action of the story as subjective autobiography. So the character's full of ideas and opinions about themselves as they tell their own story, maybe in the past, maybe in the present. Maybe they're unreliable. You can make them grandiose. You can make them self-deprecating or even delusional. And try to create a duality in the words and pictures. In other words, don't have the words echo each other. See if you can create at least 3 panels with narrative and pictures in each of them. So how is the character narrating that action? Take a shot at that. Cool. So going from there, we'll go to letter and diary narration. There's a long history of this in a lot of art forms. This is a simple example from Batman Year One. It's a good example because Bruce Wayne and Commissioner Gordon both are writing their diaries, and they're establishing their own characters and feelings in these sort of contrasting entries. So you see, start with Commissioner Gordon and then the yellow, and he's on a train, Gotham City. Maybe it's all I deserve now. Maybe it's just my time in hell. 12 hours, my stomach's been trying to eat itself for the last 5. Barbara's flying in, I don't care how much it costs. Train's no way to come to Gotham. In an airplane from above, all you'd see are streets and buildings. Fool you into thinking it's civilized. And of course, Bruce Wayne is experienced just the opposite and wants just the opposite. He wants to be on the ground. The plane says, beginning our descent, and Bruce Wayne's diary says, from here, it's all clean shafts of concrete and snowy rooftops, the work of men who died generations ago. From here, it looks like an achievement. I should have taken the train. I should be closer. I should see the enemy. So we get a feeling for what it is the character wants, and we get, we understand their own subjectivity, their own feelings about what's going on, but it comes across in the diary. In Watchmen, the diary was a plot element as well as a way to just show how deranged Rorschach was. in this entry. He's writing his final entry. If I'm reading this now, whether I'm alive or dead, you will know the truth. Whatever precise nature of this conspiracy, Adrian Veidt, responsible, have done best to make this legible. Believe it paints a disturbing picture, and there he goes, putting it in the post office box. I regret nothing, have lived life free from compromise. Back to Jaime Hernandez, who, again, was really exploring a lot of narrative, a lot of points of view early on in his career as a cartoonist, and really settled eventually on something much more straightforward, but again was really playful early on. So here's Maggie writing to Hopi. She's now on a mechanics expedition. Day 1, well, here we are. Sorry I've taken so long to write, but we have to go about 90 miles into Zato to mail a letter, and the express here is so slow. But anyway, remember when I told you we were working deep in the jungle? Well, even I didn't know it would be deep, deep, deep jungle where the local native language is so complex that even the closest tribes, which are several miles away, can't make it out. I mean, this jungle is so deep that if the rocket we have to fix didn't open some space when it crash landed, we'd all be living in the trees. Our huts are very nice. They're just like the ones in the movies, only they smell like caca. I guess I'll just have to get used to the stench here. And I mean, this jungle is so deep that next to this big, big, big rocket ship we have to fix that is stuck in the slimy muck is a big, big, old, fat, smelly, old black dinosaur. So a couple things you're getting out of this. It's not super complex, but you are getting a feel for Maggie's, her innocence and her naivete, but also the sort of straightforwardness about these dinosaurs and rockets being in the forest or in the jungle. There's a close-up of that. She says, no kidding, it looks like a Brontosaurus Rex, except it's got a bump on its head. They say it's been sitting there since the big, big bird of the sky, the rocket ship, crashed into it many years ago, and they've both been sitting there since. Anyway, we talked with Mr. Ascarino, and he filled us in on the situation. He said it's only the engine. He's crazier than the last guy. Again, the contrast here is between the wildness of the idea that there's rockets and dinosaurs in the jungle, and her the simple way she describes the world. There's a boss, a guy who needs an engine fix. There's crazy people who don't know what they're talking about. Stuff like that. This is from Judith Van Distendal's really marvelous book, When David Lost His Voice. And David is dying. He's dying of throat cancer. He can't speak anymore. And he's on morphine. He's barely conscious most of the time. But he roused himself long enough to write this note to his wife, Paula. And now Paula's, I think she has read it maybe at this point. We don't see her reading it at this point. Actually, I have forgotten. But here she's giving him a last... is it a cigarette? Gosh, I can't even remember. But the text is what's important here, and the kiss at the end. Paula, my love, it's nighttime. I'm alone and I'm thinking dearly. I've been thinking in this void for 2 weeks now, and it's even quieter than usual. There's nothing quieter. Most of the time, my thoughts are like a quagmire I can't escape. Morphine, a huge dark monster, swallows me up, but not tonight. Tonight I'm navigating through crystal clear thoughts. My brain is doing the thinking and my hand is doing the talking. And can tell you what you've never heard pass through my lips. I love you. Before my hands give out on me entirely, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. And then she gives this gentle kiss, and this is pretty much their last moment together. So it's not narrating the action as much as offering a way for one character to speak to another character. And again from Bishak Som's Apsara Engine, I think this story is Pleasure Palace. This woman is writing, my dear Layla, my room overlooks the Gulf. Through the warm eastern winds, night lulls me to sleep. I've decided to soak in the air conditioning instead. The bed sheets are, no, not silk, but made of cotton and boast some astonishing thread count, I'm assured. They have outfitted the television with, can you believe, 150 channels? Iranian soap operas, Russian quiz shows, Spanish cooking instruction, thump, thump, thump. I watched, no, don't mock, a documentary about sea turtles, older than I am. And so it establishes a rhythm. It establishes who she is and what the relationship is between her and the woman she's writing. But then this thump, thump, thump sort of breaks the routine, and then the story sort of starts again. And you'll see that a lot where sometimes a letter sort of establishes a routine, and then the story as we watch sort of changes it up a little bit. Sometimes this was, I think back in the 90s, blog or newsletter, she's writing, her name's Vita, she's writing, "Dear friend, just to get you up to date on all things related to me, here's a brief recap of my recent history. I'm in Ice Haven, living in humble exile with my grandmother, Ida, a local poetess of some renown. I have no friends here, oh joy, and I'm very much in love with my darling Ida. It's a happy time for me. I've achieved what Mary MacLane calls a truly wonderful state of miserable, morbid unhappiness, and I only hope I can describe it to you accurately." So that's sort of setting up her frame of mind, what she's doing there. It gives us a little framework for Ida as well. So let's try this. Depict the action in a letter or diary. Write at least 4 sentences and draw at least 1 panel, maybe 2. Who's the character writing to? And then what relationship are you establishing when they're doing that writing? And go farther with the letter not describing the action, but letting the thoughts and the feelings from a letter be read while the action is happening in the drawings. So an interior monologue, something that's like more stream of consciousness. There's a couple examples here. We're inside the character's head. This is from Rusty Brown, and Rusty's just going to school. I think it's the first day of school. My stomach hurts. School smell. New school smell. Always makes it hurt. I hate it. Hate it. What is it? Floor wax? Can't be late. I can't be late. 4th floor. Oh, I want to go. I know nobody's going to like me. Nobody. So there's this repetition. There's this like the randomness that goes on in our mind when we're in this sort of agitated, high anxiety state. Oops. Something again from Kim Krantz, Blossoms and Bones. She's sort of having I would say it's an interior dialogue. You see her looking for a title. A new project begins. 30 days. A month with the stomach? No, that's not the right title. A month with the heart? No. Nice try. 30 days with an eating disorder? Getting closer. A month of binge drawings? Maybe. The eating disorder drawings? Close. Maybe you should draw the thing first and ask it what its name is. That would be showing up in the way the whole project intends. So maybe be quiet for a second, see what wants to happen. Just start drawing it right now? Yes. With no plan? Yes. Without a way to frame it? Yes. Manage it? Yes. Present it? Yes. Just draw the feeling? Yes. It makes me feel sick just thinking about it. It's okay. I'm already ashamed. It's okay. It makes me want to eat. Perfect. Of course it does. Draw the feeling, etc., etc. So this can be really powerful sometimes. There's another Chris Ware example. This is a dream. It's a good example of how this might read, but it being a dream is sort of a different sort of situation. I'm going to use this cursor to move us through what's going on. She wakes up and she hears something, but she's not sure what it is. And then mother, and she follows. Oh my God, it is mother, but I thought she died. Didn't she die? Is it possible for me to have mistaken this fact? My God. The attic? She's in the attic? Oops, open. Oh my God, it's true. She is in the attic. How could I have forgotten about her? What have I been doing the past 30 years? I must go to her, but It's too late. She doesn't know me anymore. And her eyes have been replaced with black marbles. Please forgive me, please forgive me. If only I'd known sooner. I lost 30 years of time. What happened? How could I have been so selfish, etc., etc. So again, it's a dream. Dream is almost always going to have a certain stream of consciousness or interior monologue feeling to it, but it's an example that can be pretty useful. So let's try this. 1 or 2 panels depicting at least 5 sentences of a main character's interior monologue or stream of consciousness, or even dialogue in the same way that Kim Krantz had the 2 characters inside of her trying to sort of wrestle it out. Depict what he or she is thinking while they're doing something active. Show us that. So here's something uncommon, the interior monologue visual example. So showing us what's in the character's head, but doing it visually. Since we're in a comic, since we're in a graphic medium, doing it visually. And you'll have to forgive my French here, but I think you'll see what's going on. There's a father and 2 children. Are you okay, Papa? Sure, why? Je sais pas je sais pas. I don't know, you just have that air about you. You just seem it. No. No, I'm fine. So it's okay about the cat? Yeah, of course. So I think they've asked him for a pet cat. And meanwhile, this cat in his head is just rearing up and leaping into it. I mean, he's clearly way more agitated than he's saying. Ileana Notre shows. Is there something else? There's something else I would like. And the cat is back sort of in this cage. Oh man, I don't know what this French says. Something for my brother. So, oops, that's not funny. I'm afraid I'm not sure what this is, but that's okay because the visuals are what's important here. Is that okay? Are you okay with that? Sure. Yeah, of course. And the cat escapes from this cage. Clearly, we're gonna have to find out what this text means. And then here's another example. It's a little more clear. He's on a train, the same character, and he's sort of captive by this woman who's talking. Are you hot? Are you warm? I'm from Paris. Are you from Paris and going on vacation, right? And he's starting to get freaked out, a little, again, agitated. He's constantly agitated. He's starting to feel caged in, and this cage starts to develop over the next few panels. Yeah, me too. I'm going on vacation. I'm going to see my brother in Marseille. I love my brother, but his wife hates me. But my husband is dead. Oh, so anyway, she's talking a lot. He's getting caged in. I always forget what profit means. So anyway, she's really just talking and talking. And finally he breaks free, runs out of the train. His head is on fire by the time he breaks out of it. So it's really, really, again, I'll use this word expressionistic. You're really getting a feeling. You're really getting the feeling of what the character is going through the visuals here. Crowded subway. We're seeing all these people turn into skeletons and skulls in his head. It's his head. It's not like the author isn't giving you like some groovy interpretation. You're seeing it through the character's point of view, and that's what's important here. And by the end here, all those skulls are just sort of streaming out of his head, and he can't get out of it. There he is trying to get out of the subway car and runs away. A variation on this is Sergio Aragonés from Mad Magazine would always do these things. I can't remember if it had a particular name, but it was just these silly things where the shadow, there would be a situation and the shadow of the character would be sort of giving you the real feeling behind the character, or the real thought behind the character. And you can see some, we'll zoom in a little bit. So, oh, I've just, this guy's just stepped on some doggy poop, but really he just wants to throw that shoe at that dog owner there. This little boy is just playing with sand, but he's imagining, or she's imagining, they're a big space explorer. This person just having some frustration with his candy machine, but really would like to just throw a bazooka to it. The standard sort of just walking away, but really wants to throw a bunch of sand on this hulky guy here. These people watching a home movie, but really everybody really thinks it stinks and would like to sneak away. Those kinds of things. It's a really fun experiment. Aragonés would do this kind of thing often. And that's something we should try. So depict what is in the main character's head as they're doing something active. Depict what's inside their head visually somehow in the panel. How can you do that? Do it for 3 panels. And after that, go one step farther. Draw one of those previous panels, but change the main character into something non-human or something metaphorical, different than their previous state. You can make them a garbage can, I say, or a wolf or a satellite or banana. Do it for 1 panel. There's that classic Looney Tunes where, suddenly the character turns into a chicken dinner because somebody's hungry. And I have a note here, David B's epileptic is a constant rolling series of metaphors in which the main character and some of the side characters and even some of the abstractions within the story are depicted as dragons and ghosts and demons and all sorts of things. So the second variation is sort of hoping you'll play with metaphor a little. So a dramatic monologue, that's when the main character is talking to the reader, or talking to whomever is a substitute for the reader. Maybe they're being interviewed. Maybe they know you're watching them. This is Robert Crumb. Don't worry about it. Who's worried? Do I look worried? I'm not worried. Maybe I'm a little worried. I wish I had a nickel for all the things I'm worried about, not worried about, etc., etc., etc. So this character's just confronted with this idea, don't worry about it. And for 12 panels, they just sort of go on about not being worried. Variation on that, Jack Kirby, 4 panels here. Ah, you've been watching me, haven't you? This is kind of Kirby at his most, a little bit grandiose and kind of surreal, frankly. You've been watching me, haven't you? Then you know that the flame of hate lies in free domain, and those nasty, crawly, snapping demons who brought poor Custer to his doom were more than fanciful creations. Let him create miracles who is born to the task. And if you don't see it, both of his hands are talking, his fingers are talking. This is sort of zany, but he's talking to us. He wants us to feel really, really frightened and in awe of the amount of power that's happening here. Who leaps at life, both angry and wise? Who smarts within from man and dares to wrest from him like a tiger all those dominions that lie without? Okay, whatever. It's kind of some fun stuff. Again, pulling from Seth's George Sprott. This is a variation where somebody is being interviewed. It's clear they're being interviewed. And even in some examples, you're seeing like what they're being interviewed about. Television, trash mostly. Back in the early days, they at least had a few good ideas. But today, no thank you. I never watched the thing. Or here, he never even visited my mother before he moved on. Maybe I could forgive him for abandoning us, but not for that. Or on regret. Night is the difficult time. That's when you see the regrets palpably before your eyes. You lie there and you suffer and you count those old wrongs again. Far too late to fix them now. So the monologue is it's a different sort of framing of what the character might be thinking about, feeling about, talking about. Another Kirby. These 2 pages are Roberta Gregory here. These 2 pages here are the author talking to you from like page 1, saying, "Hey, Jack Kirby's my name, comics are my game, I'm going to got you a bunch of good stories here." And Roberta Gregory likewise says, "Hi folks, I'm the lady artist here. You can call me Bert. Everyone else does. I'm thrilled to tell you about this story." And she sort of sets up some ideas about it and has a little mini drama where the cat bites her and stuff like that. So that's another sort of variation you sometimes see in comic books. Funny early work from me. This character was supposedly in a prison and being interviewed. Maybe it's a documentary or something, or a radio or something, and so that camera was never not trained on this character. Always trained totally on him as he's looking directly at the camera. The Angry Criminal, that comic was called. So let's try this. Depict a main character's monologue to the reader or to someone interviewing them. Try that for 3 panels. This can be really fun. Now, finally, we get to second-person narration. EC Comics used this a lot to add suspense and a sort of direct emotional connection. They sort of put you in the story. "Today at last, you're the most important man in France. You stand at the window and the pride swells within you as you look out at Madame Guillotine. Already the citizens of Paris have a pet name for your invention. And today your invention is to be used for the first time," etc., etc. A lot of EC Comics were used with the second-person narration, sometimes to really good effect. Here, you look around at your fellow passengers sitting alone in their own little worlds of fear. You study their faces, their features, their eyes, always looking. What are you looking for, Carl? What is it you're afraid of? So we're a person named Carl in this story. And now he's looking at you. He's looking at your hair, at your lips, your nose, deep into your frightened eyes, and a spark of faraway long ago recognition ignites his face. "You!" Joke. "It's you!" And then we are this character. We have to run away. It's really engaging, and it's a terrific story. Ben Passmore put this to really good use recently with Your Black Friend. It starts off with your black friend is sitting in a coffee shop, your favorite coffee shop. He's eating a po' boy even though he knows he's not supposed to. He's hoping the white guilt will keep the barista from confronting him about it. The rest of that story is just this, again, that emotional connection. Like, if we make this second person, then you will be a part of that story. You will understand it more. You will feel it more. And that's what Passmore does in this great comic. Another EC comic, Harvey Kurtzman throwing you into a hand-to-hand combat in the Korean War. And one character, you, kill another character. And it's very, very, very powerful. Eddie Campbell using second person to tell his own autobiography. It was a really interesting idea, and it makes it sound like it was destiny, or makes it sound like it was always a plan. So he says things like, "Once you've made your decision, you may wait a while for the change to fall upon you from heaven. However, your cue to step out onto the stage will be clear and precise. One day the pointless job will finish, the factory will close down, and from that moment you may confidently describe yourself as an artist. Do not be deterred. At your own small expense, put your work where it will be seen and continue to be seen. It's the age of the photocopier. Quality reproduction is available to all," etc., etc. So this is called Fate of the Artist. And again, that second person narration makes it seem like it's always going to happen one way, and it was fate for it to happen that way. Terrific version, terrific idea. This is from Alabaster, whose comic called Talamaru was this like weird little kitten owl creature, and Talamaru isn't so great at being alive. And these, the narrator or these birds or something, they're always taunting Talamaru. She's the main character, but she's also never speaks, but she's spoken to. Talamaru, wake up. Don't be lazy. What will you do today? Where will you go? What will you eat? No, Talamaru. You don't want to eat plants. Talamarus like to eat meat. Oops. Plants, meat. Yeah, this is a plant and this is meat. What's the matter? She sees this rabbit or whatever. What's the matter? Go get it. You stupid shit. It got away. Now you'll starve. That's not the way to do it, silly Talamaru. Use your wits. So the author, Alabaster, is really just, she's tormenting this poor little creature, but she's also playing with her own, her own sort of personality. She's taunting herself to some degree. And playing with the kind of part of us, that doesn't want to engage in too much, doesn't want to engage too much at all, but certainly not in killing and the ruthless things we need to do sometimes to survive. Talamaru is a really, really great comic. Lastly, Theo Ellsworth takes this another step I've never seen anyone else do. He makes you the character, but you get to be who you are. So this big monster is saying, you're your name. See the asterisk there? You're you, right? Thank God I found you. Look, you better come with me. I strapped this chair to my head so you won't have to walk. And then, it's a little choose your own adventure or something. It says, you can probably smell his breath from where you're standing. What does it smell like? If it smells terrible, I'm sorry. If it smells amazing, you're welcome. And then as we go up to this panel, thanks so much for coming all the way in here to meet me like this. This is the only place where I can do whatever I want, so it's the ideal setting. And, should he have asked before picking you up like that? So this is you, don't forget. There you go, nice and cozy like. Okay, now hold on, I'm going to stand up. How do you like that body I put you in? Pretty weird, huh? I can't let you keep it, though. You have to give it back when this is done. Sorry. You've probably noticed by now that we have a one-way communication. I can talk to you, but you can't talk to me. It's not that I don't want to hear what you have to say. It's just how this venue works. And it says to you, you can probably see really far from up here. Anyway, so yeah, this is a really intriguing concept of making you the character while you ride on this monster's head and explore this sort of subconscious milieu. So let's try this. Depict the action in detached second-person narration. Use the you pronoun and do it for 3 panels. Let's go. Now, here's a variation of that second-person visual with no narration. So the person is coming at you, and you are a character. They are recognizing you as a character, and you just sort of have to participate. But again, there's no narration. This is Otomo. I forget Otomo's first name. He's the creator of Akira, and so this is just a character. This is just a story where you barge in on this guy. Oh, it's you. We're gonna read right to left here. Well, come on in. I ain't doing much, just bumming around, And now we're over here, and we're getting a look at his apartment. How about some coffee? There's barely enough left for the 2 of us. And then every once in a while you ask a question, but you don't hear yourself ask a question, but he clues you in. My job? I quit. I was fed up with that store. Let's move on. And then later on there's an altercation. Hey, don't get so worked up. Come on, man, sit down. What the heck are you doing? I love this panel. Wait, you want to punch me with those fists of yours? Excuse me. Just because of one chick? Dude, calm down. What? Whoa, hey. So, we, the character, are getting so worked up, we throw him across the room. Psh, what? What did you say? You think I killed Atsuko? Yeah, it's a really fun, challenging thing to try and make you part of the conflict. Not even part of the conflict, but the agitator of the conflict. This is from Peter Bagg, Buddy Bradley. It's a way of introducing a new part of the story here. He's like, hey, I'm in this new apartment. It takes up the whole top floor of this house. 4 rooms for only $450 a month. Pretty cheap for this town, let me tell you. It's in pretty good shape too, except when it rains we get these weird wet stains in the hallway. It looks like water, but if you touch it, it's sticky. Gross, huh? I gotta show you the balcony. Anyway, and he takes you on this tour of the house. Come here, you gotta check out the view from this side. So let's try that. Draw 3 panels of your story, but the reader is a guest or a character in the story. Guide the reader's eye as if he or she or they were an active eyeball or camera in the scene, and never leave that visual perspective. Try that. So that's it. Like, that's given us a lot to think about and a lot of variations to try, and it changes everything to just make one gentle change in like who's telling the story or whatever. It creates subtext. It gives us a chance to add conflict, even in just in the text and imagery together. There can be conflict. There can be a sort of dialogue between the two. And on this page, I say we can go forward and we think about how do we show action? Do we show it with just visuals? Do we show it with a lot of text? Do we show it with no text? Just everyone has to infer some of what's going on. This is show, not tell. This is don't show or tell. Everything has to be sort of inferred, and this is tell, not show. And that's just some things to think about. We did a lot of telling in this presentation, a lot of like working through the text that might sort of communicate what's going on, but it's that dialogue between the text and the imagery, between the narration, between the tone of voice, between the personality of who's in charge of telling the story and what the story is. It's that dynamic that can really send your comics over the edge and make them really special. So have fun.